Manor Lords, Ostriv, Foundation, and now the First Explorers. How many of these games are we going to get? Is it a positive for the community? And is this another solo developed game that is going to smash all the competition out of the park? Well, let's find out. This is First Explorers. So it seems the year of solo developers is upon us, because Manor Lords just wasn't enough apparently. You know when behemoth titles like Skull and Bones fail, giving themselves ridiculous titles like Quadruple A? Leave it to the people who have a real and proper passion for gaming to actually come and save the day. And this, well, this has been shown. Manor Lords has managed to break all the barriers, with millions of copies sold, making Hooded Horse and Slavic Magic, the developer, overnight millionaires and, more importantly, legends of the scene. Yet they're not the only ones. Let me introduce to you the First Explorers. This is a solo developed RTS city builder game. Yes, have you heard that description before? I think I have quite a few times at this point. Building villages, expanding territory, and with a spicy flair of Age of Empires with defeating enemies. So it is pretty much based on the Settlers series, but with some extra RTS elements in there as well. Not necessarily on the same sort of scale as something like a Manor Lords, but as a solo developer, we're seeing some really promising stuff coming out of it. So I thought I'd have a little look at what they are basing this on. First of all, you go up through various levels. Much like every other city builder, you start with a hamlet, and then eventually you can get to a large town, if not a city. But to start with, we only have a few buildings to choose from. Your regular ones like woodcutters, sawmills, stonecutters, that sort of thing. Nothing too spicy, nothing too impressive. But your first starting game and the mechanics that go around your early gameplay are pretty similar, stuff that we've seen before. What we can see on screen, though, is the Roman faction, and there will be 3 factions: Gaul, I think Carthaginians potentially, and the Romans. And this game is set within that antiquity time era, which makes me very, very happy. You know what? I absolutely love this time period. I think it's something that doesn't get kind of love that it needs to, because the Total War games haven't been back there since Rome 2, or I guess Attila. The Trojan Pharaoh count? I don't particularly think so. I mean, Age of Empires haven't been back to the ancient Age of Empires 1. We've been basically in the medieval at the moment. So it's nice to see we're going all the way back. Games like 0 AD, who have done something quite similar, but don't quite have, at least from what I can see, the technology that the First Explorers does. But the Romans look absolutely beautiful. I don't think we're going to go for severe historical accuracy, but from what the initial trailers are shown and this bit of gameplay, do they look nice? There's been a lot of attention to detail put into the textures and the way that they look, and all in all, it is a very beautiful looking game so far. Soldiers can be sent out to scout as well, because like any good city builder, there is a fog of war at the beginning of this game. So you're able to go and find resources, of course, where the enemy are, which we'll get onto in a little bit. And this is where we have a little look at the boundaries of our areas. Since unlike a game like Age of Empires, where you can go out and explore pretty much anywhere and build in any region that you want to, that's not quite how it works in the First Explorers. This is about building up your town and slowly but surely sustainably expanding. Your village has its own boundaries. These can be seen by the surrounding rocks. This can be expanded by building watchtowers, but only when a soldier is in said tower does your settlement boundary increase. This lets you build further and wider and slowly creep towards different areas of the map. Okay, you can't do that heading off into the wilderness, as mentioned, like Age of Empires, which some may seem like a negative, but really sending off a group of villagers to go and build a mining camp or a woodcutter's lodge off on the other side of the map just because you've run out of resources near your area is an interesting mechanic, but it's not exactly the realistic approach, which is what we're doing here, trying to make a more sustainable and a stronger base before you go off and expand your territory. So how do we grow? We need to make sure we got enough resources. You can, of course, collect berries, farm, you can mine, you can collect wood. Then you need things like cookhouses to take food to the tavern, which will draw in other settlers who, if happy, might eventually join you. Then they can be assigned to jobs as you would expect. This is how population is grown if you have the right amount of houses and resources in order to equate for it. There are a few little mechanics that I really like, something that I think I saw back in Banished. Remember that 2014 game? Yep. They've also taken some mechanics from that, being able to paint areas for work whether it's gathering resources or even the places where your farms would be set up. You want to limit areas. Maybe it's just collect trees from that area, just farm that area. This is really good for city management and making, at least on the surface, a very aesthetically beautiful town. But then later on, it comes more into efficiency, making sure your villagers aren't walking too far and they're gathering resources from the most bountiful places. There is an indicated colors for terrain heights where you can and can't build, where the best places are for certain types of buildings, which is going to be very useful for micromanagement. And all in all, the game looks absolutely gorgeous. One of the standout things is the water. We've seen this with solo developed titles. I can't get over how well they've done with this sort of thing. I mean, Manor Lords did it as well, going for the more realistic look. Whether this is that realistic look, I don't know, but it is still absolutely gorgeous. Animations are beautiful. I love the way the buildings form. Also, look at that road forming. God, that's so satisfying. It all looks well and good. A solo developed project, a new RTS, a new city builder. We haven't really had anything in terms of combat so far, but I'm guessing from what they've been saying, it's going to be more towards Age of Empires rather than what Manor Lords is doing, which is taking inspiration from a Total War game. I think all in all, there is a lot to love here. But is there anything entirely different? We have a few nice little mechanics, such as painting work areas and of course the boundaries of buildings, being able to garrison inside buildings. That's nothing too new, but it's a nice touch to have nonetheless. But we've seen a lot of these city builders, and my worry is there needs to be something that sets this one apart. I love the fact it's set in antiquity, and so far I think it's got a lot of promise. But games like Manor Lords, Foundation, Ostriv, Banished, Patreon, Forest Village, 0 AD, Ancient Cities, Age of Empires, Builders of Egypt, you know what? I could go on for absolutely years listing these like games. It goes on, and trying to distinguish yourself in a market that's so saturated is going to be incredibly tricky, especially for one person. But, I mean, Manor Lords have done it. They've done a fantastic job, so maybe we could see something similar here. But let's have a little look at the Steam page, because that has now been put up and it is ready to be wishlisted. Of course, we have screenshots, we have the gameplay that I've been showing you on screen, and all in all so far, there's a lot of positives to come out of it. A Settlers-like game that offers the perfect mix of organic city building with an RTS in a bustling world. Set in the time of antiquity in Europe, you'll play as Romans, Carthaginians, or Gaul. Are you ready to raise an army backed by a thriving economy? There's been plenty of interviews and gameplay showcases. It seems like it is very open, and once again, in terms of recommended settings, this feels like it's going to be an incredibly accessible game to an incredibly wide audience, made by a very, very small team, if not helmed by just one person. They also have set up a Patreon because, I mean, why not? I think that's the way most of these solo developed stuff's going. I mean, Manor Lords did it where they managed to get funding from Epic Games, and then eventually, just because it grew, and hopefully we can see something similar here with more support and more people coming in and talking about the First Explorers, maybe even getting some sort of funding with that, because there's a lot of positivity here. But my concerns, I think, are pretty valid, and I'd love to know what you think on that. Are we getting too many of these types of games? What can they do to set it apart? Everything within this game seems like it's going very refined, and there's a lot of love and passion. And within an industry where it seems like passion is severely lacking, I think this could be a turning point, at least for these RTS or city builders. They seem to be championing it, and I'm glad that historical games are getting more of an insight because, well, after Skull and Bones, the historical gaming market is all indie.